Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like up. With Star Trek IV not happening and Star Trek Strange New Worlds ending in 2 years, Star Trek must contend with a future without Captain James T. Kirk and Mr. Spock. Nearly a decade after Star Trek Beyond, Paramount Skydance is moving on from a fourth film about Chris Pine's Captain Kirk, Zachary Quinto's Spock, and their USS Enterprise crew. According to Variety, Paramount is interested in a fresh Star Trek movie. Although what that will be isn't clear, J.J. Abrams' alternate Kelvin timeline movies from 2009 to 2016 appear to be over. Meanwhile, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which introduced younger, prime timeline versions of Spock, played by Ethan Peck, and James T. Kirk, played by Paul Wesley, will end with Season 5, which is in production now. Peck and Wesley's Spock and Kirk are the canonical younger versions of the Vulcan and Captain originated by Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner. Star Trek Strange New Worlds' fifth and final season will likely premiere on Paramount Plus in 2027, and the prequel's conclusion is designed to lead into Star Trek, the original series. What happens to Kirk and Spock after that is up in the air, but while there's a slim chance their voyages could continue on television, Kirk and Spock's movie adventures appear to be done. Paramount Skydance moving on from making Star Trek IV marks the end of Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock as the centerpiece of the Star Trek movie franchise. Except for the 8 years from 1994 to 2002 when Star Trek The Next Generation made 4 movies, the other 8 Star Trek movies starred 2 different versions of Kirk and Spock. William Shatner's Admiral/Captain Kirk and Leonard Nimoy's Spock were the focus of 6 Star Trek movies from 1979 to 1991. In 2009, J.J. Abrams successfully recast and rebooted Kirk and Spock with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto in Star Trek 2009. And they continued in 2013 as Star Trek Into Darkness and 2016 as Star Trek Beyond. For general movie-going audiences spanning generations, Star Trek is about Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, and the Starship Enterprise. Star Trek The Next Generation was popular enough to replace Kirk and Spock in the 1990s, but that fizzled out in 2002 with Star Trek Nemesis's failure. When it came time to reboot Star Trek, J.J. Abrams breathed new life into Kirk and Spock. A Star Trek theatrical movie without Kirk and Spock or Patrick Stewart's Captain Jean-Luc Picard is the undiscovered country that Paramount Skydance and the Star Trek movie franchise face. Whatever the next Star Trek movie will be, it will be a gamble and have to be something very new without the safe bet of Captain Kirk and Spock. Of course, another reboot of Kirk and Spock at the movies with new actors replacing Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto is also possible, but there's no hint of that being Paramount Skydance's Star Trek movie plan. Star Trek Discovery ran for 1 controversial season before bringing in Spock, played by Ethan Peck, in Season 2, which premiered in 2018. 4 years later, Star Trek Strange New Worlds introduced Paul Wesley as Lieutenant James T. Kirk, although Wesley also played several alternate reality versions of Captain Kirk. While Star Trek Strange New Worlds is about Captain Christopher Pike Anson Mount leading the Starship Enterprise, the prequel series has been actively building Kirk and Spock's friendship, knowing that the Enterprise's future will be in their hands in Star Trek, the original series. The upcoming end of Star Trek Strange New Worlds in Season 5 is also the conclusion of Ethan Peck and Paul Wesley's run as Spock and Kirk, and of the central Star Trek duo's renaissance on Paramount Plus. Star Trek Strange New Worlds' executive producers and co-showrunners Akiva Goldsman and Henry Alonso Myers have been vocal about their desire to spin off Paul Wesley's Captain Kirk and Ethan Peck's Spock into a new series about their first year in command of the USS Enterprise, dubbed Star Trek Year 1. There's always a possibility that, if Paul Wesley and Ethan Peck's versions of Kirk and Spock don't continue after Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Star Trek will television eventually reboot Kirk and Spock yet again with new actors in a new iteration. Star Trek is potentially on the cusp of the biggest upheaval of the franchise since Star Trek Discovery premiered in 2017, which sparked a new renaissance that led to Star Trek Picard, Star Trek, Lower Decks, Star Trek, Prodigy, Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, Star Trek, Section 31, and Star Trek, Starfleet Academy. Alex Kurtzman's Secret Hideout has overseen the Star Trek on Paramount Plus TV franchise since 2017, but their contract is up in 2026. Paramount Skydance may seek a new direction and new stewards for Star Trek going forward. Thus, the Star Trek franchise could become different after 2027, when Star Trek, Strange New Worlds is over, since Star Trek, Starfleet Academy could end after Season 2. Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock are the heart and soul of Star Trek, and only Captain Picard truly matched them as the central icons of the franchise. It's hard to imagine Star Trek without Kirk and Spock, but that could be where the franchise is headed in the near future. Star Trek. The next generation's popularity in the 1990s was a vision of what Star Trek could be without Kirk and Spock at its center. It will be a challenge for Star Trek to create an iteration that proves to be as beloved as TNG was. But that hasn't truly happened with any Star Trek on Paramount Plus series. 2 years from now, the Star Trek universe may look like something radically different, something almost unimaginable to longtime fans who've walked beside the Federation since 1966. For decades, Kirk and Spock have been the heartbeats of Starfleet mythology, the twin stars around which countless stories have orbited. But the sands are shifting. New timelines are branching, new captains are rising, and the franchise is quietly preparing to evolve beyond the most iconic duo in science fiction history. The truth is simple. Star Trek is about to leap into an era where the Federation's future no longer needs Captain James T. Kirk and Commander Spock to survive. It's not an erasure. It's not even a goodbye. It's something more profound, a metamorphosis, the inevitable evolution of a 60-year legacy. For almost 6 decades, every Star Trek generation has returned to the same gravitational center, Kirk and Spock. Even when they weren't physically present, their legacy echoed. In the next generation, Picard referenced them with quiet reverence. In Deep Space Nine, Sisko inherited a war shaped by choices they influenced. In Star Trek 2009, Spock Prime became the emotional bridge between universes. In Strange New Worlds, younger versions of them still drive storylines and fan passion. And yet, a franchise cannot rely forever on 2 men, no matter how legendary. The gears of change are visibly turning. The shows currently in development, and the timeline shifts already in motion, tell a clear story. In 2 years, the era of constant Kirk and Spock storytelling will conclude. Why? Because the future of Star Trek is expanding at a rate that no longer needs to orbit around the original Enterprise. A Federation ready for new legends. The evidence is everywhere. The newest live-action shows have embraced ensembles where the emotional weight doesn't rest on reincarnating the TOS formula. Whether it's 24th century politics, 32nd century exploration, or wholly new branches of Starfleet, the shift is unmistakable. The next phase of Trek is aiming at brand new captains who don't live in Kirk's shadow, alien-centric arcs that push beyond the familiar Federation paradigms, temporal experimentation, exploring eras where the Enterprise isn't even built, smaller stories about cadets, misfits, or outposts far beyond the golden age of exploration. The franchise is growing into something bigger, something that represents the entire galaxy, not just the USS Enterprise NCC 1701. Kirk and Spock will always belong to Trek's DNA, but the next era wants to write its own chromosomes. Why even Strange New Worlds won't hold them forever. Strange New Worlds has given fans a glowing revival of the TOS spirit, complete with a younger Kirk, a younger Spock, and the familiar elegance of a Constitution-class bridge. Its popularity proves something important. Nostalgia still works, and works brilliantly. But nostalgia is fuel, not a destination. Its timeline is a countdown to canon inevitabilities. Pike's fate, Kirk's future captaincy, Spock's transformation into the figure we meet in A Mock Time. At some point, the show must step aside for the franchise to breathe new air. As production shifts and Trek experiments with new formats, animated hybrids, serialized anthology concepts, even talk of a 25th century cinematic pivot, the gravitational pull of Kirk and Spock weakens. Not because fans love them less, but because the universe is finally big enough to move beyond them. And in 2 years, the shift becomes irreversible. The torchbearers of the new galaxy. So who carries Starfleet into this Kirk and Spock-less horizon? Not replacements. Trek never works when it tries to clone its icons. Instead, the next generation of characters are designed to reflect modern storytelling. Morally complex captains who don't always choose the safest option. Hybrid species officers navigating identity beyond Spock's half-Vulcan struggle. Telepathic or augmented characters dealing with ethics new to the Federation. Non-human leads, perhaps even captains, shifting the human-centric lens. Younger crews, showing Starfleet through fresh eyes rather than seasoned brilliance. These characters aren't designed to mimic Kirk's swagger or Spock's logic. They're built to embody the universe's next big thematic leaps. Kirk and Spock represented the 1960s ideals of balance between emotion and logic, impulse and intellect. Today's world demands a more diverse canvas. Fractured alliances, post-scarcity dilemmas, and a galaxy where utopia is more aspiration than assumption. Future Trek is ready for stories where the captain isn't a hero by default. The science officer isn't the smartest person in every room, and the crew doesn't always get home unchanged. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay with us.